This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk about the potential PlayStation 6 S, Helldivers 2 selling extremely well on Xbox, the next Steam Deck not coming anytime soon, and more. All of this tonight, but debuting tonight, the brand new Beautiful Bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 100. I am your host, the man whose next generation has already released as a smaller, thinner, red-headed version of himself, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who got shut down by Ubisoft but is being brought back by fans, Justin, better known as I'm Zaracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
It's been interesting. It's been good, and it's been okay, and it's been even great in some ways. So I despite knowing that this week was going to be crazy with work, I said I'm gonna go ahead and just enjoy the weekend. I'm going to just relax and enjoy myself before all the chaos comes around. So I essentially did that. Did some stuff, some work here and there on Saturday, but did some gaming here as well. Got back into a book I was reading before that I put down for a bit, so I did some of that. Sunday worked on some music stuff, which I've got some stuff figured out and taken care of, but there's been an issue I've been having with just the MIDI notes and trying to get them to sustain, and I think I've gotten everything taken care of, but I just want to take care of a few more things first and like check a couple of online like message boards just to make sure that I know the fix that I need to apply before I can apply it. But I think everything else though is pretty much set with what I need to do. It's just trying to take care of that last issue there. And then of course Monday was Labor Day. I cooked something or a few things that were different than how I would normally do it. So there were some recipes that I saw on YouTube from my watch later list that I finally went back to, and I tried two things. One of them was, it's essentially a ranch burger, but it's essentially I can't remember what the unofficial name is, but it's just essentially a ranch burger with sort of like a cheese mayo ranch bacon blend that's sort of like put on top as a spread. That was pretty good. I like that. And then there was another thing that was interesting and unique that I never would have considered trying, which was a grilled cheese hot dog. That was pretty good. So I tried that and I enjoyed it. So yes, that was good. And then the following day was the day where I first started taking the over for the person who's out on vacation right now. And so yeah, that it was definitely a challenge, I'll say, but fortunately with the person who I was coordinating with, he was very helpful with getting stuff to me pretty early on, so that way it gave me time to do what I needed to do. Unfortunately, I was able to help out the usual stuff with my colleagues, but I was able to jump in near the end of the day to just take care of something that needed to be done. And while there was a small technical issue that was preventing us from just signing off on the thing at the end of the day, everything else, though, had been taken care of relatively early, all things being said and done. So I'm glad that that's out of the way. It's just 2 more weeks of doing that now, but it shouldn't be as big of an issue as it was this past week, since that was just chaos. But God got me through that, so I'm grateful for that. And yeah, and hey, and episode 100. I mean, who'd have thought about that?
Right.
I mean, last year we were just trying to get the first episode to work. Now we're already at episode 100, so good milestone.
Yep.
But yeah, that's all I've got.
Cool. Well, let's see here. My week. So of course, since we recorded Tuesday last week, Wednesday. Let's see here. Yeah, I guess it was a normal work day. Just normal work day. Other than, of course, editing the podcast and getting that up ready to go for Friday. And Thursday we went into Kansas City for my son's doctor's appointment, which thankfully, instead of, it used to be we would have to go in every month, and then it was down to every 6 months. Now we have a full year before we have to go back. So that's great. He's making a lot of progress in the issues he was having. So it's very good from that standpoint. And but then I think it was either Thursday or Friday. It was probably Thursday. So I got that. Actually, maybe it might have actually been Wednesday now that I think about it. So I got that controller to test out the one that has the Hall effect joysticks and stuff. And I just turned it on, obviously, but so some things about this. Of course, it has the back buttons on the back here on both sides. They're very small, but they work well. It has Hall effect joysticks and Hall effect triggers. The triggers you can change between being the full analog pull and just being the quick, like what you have on the Switch and stuff on the Nintendo controllers, and it's just doing a switch between that to get one or the other, how far it goes. I've tested. It has. Let's see here. It's pretty easy to set up the back buttons, and you can set macros if you want. There's a turbo function, which I haven't tried out yet, mostly just because I can't think of any game to really utilize it in. But I'll have to make sure I test that out. Let's see here. I tested it in like 3 different games, and I'll talk about those a bit later. I guess technically actually I tested it in about 4 games. One of them I just didn't save any footage because it's basically like I played for a couple minutes just to get footage I needed for putting together the new version of the intro for the video part of it. But yeah, it's laid out almost identical to Xbox Series X controller, except the D-pad is bigger. And obviously it has the back buttons, has, the Hall effect joysticks, although otherwise the sticks are the same kind of sticks that the Series X uses. Same exact, shape and everything. It's just obviously the internals are different. You can customize the lighting on the joysticks, with various RGB settings. And it's pretty easy to change that. I don't remember exactly offhand how to do it because I basically just set it as blue because that's the one I like best, and then left it. But something nice about it is that after you pair it to the USB dongle, you can plug it into any other device, at least so far, and as soon as you turn on the controller and then press the home button equivalent, it'll connect. Because I had plugged it, I had been using it on my desktop. That's the only place I had used it, and then because I wanted to demonstrate it and my desktop is turned off, I wanted to demonstrate the lighting, really. I just plugged it into my laptop and then turned it on, and it worked immediately. So it's pretty cool. I haven't used it enough to where I'm ready to do a full review. I definitely need to spend some more time with it. Hopefully over the weekend I'll get some time to work on that. But yeah, I'm impressed with it so far. And I need to test it in more games. Definitely need to test it in games where I can utilize the gyro function, especially. So I'm going to have to figure out which games I want to test it on. I know that there's at least 2 or 3 different Sony titles that definitely utilize gyro. Doom Eternal also utilizes gyro. I mean, has that option, so I'll probably end up testing it there, but um, we'll see at this point. Anyway, otherwise, let's see here. So Saturday, apart from no, that's right. So Friday we had family over for our big family get together. Made a bunch of Mexican food, and it was good time. And Saturday, I spent a bunch of time putting together the new intro video, which, of course, for those who don't know, Justin here composed both the original version of the theme with the chip tunes, and then also the new version. So the new version of the theme as well is all Justin's doing, and so that coupled with the new video that I put together, which is it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, exactly what I envisioned in my head, but overall I think it worked out pretty good. I realized there's a lot of clips that I had in the previous version of the intro that didn't make it into this one, but that was a combination of, one, not having those clips anymore, and two, just it being a very different format. But something that you may or may not have noticed on when you first watched the intro is that the very first set of games, it has our top 3 games each displayed there, and then in the middle has Expedition 33, since that's been a favorite of both of ours. And then from there it's just a lot of different games that I had clips for. So, but yeah, Sunday we just had church and stuff. My middle son had basically had a viral infection on Saturday, and we ended up having to take him to the ER. I mean, it wasn't actually as serious as he thought it might be, but basically it was just he was having a little bit of trouble. It was really just sinus issues, but it was to the point where he was really paranoid that he was going to deal with croup again, and that he was going to have problems breathing like he did last time, where his oxygen levels got really low. So, I mean, it was really late evening, like around 7, that we just decided better take him to the ER just to be safe. And he got checked out, and thankfully it was nothing serious. It's just something viral, but and by this point he's basically fully recovered. But he didn't end up having any issues overnight or anything. Didn't even need any sort of medicine. We just run a vaporizer, and he's been good. So, but more than anything, it was giving him the peace of mind. And considering, I mean, if there had been something wrong, we would have rather it just be figured out before it came to being something serious, because we certainly didn't want to put our son's life in danger. So we took our chances with it, and yeah. So anyway, because of that, my wife ended up staying home from church on Sunday, and because we had some other technical issues at church, it ended up being just me playing. I mean, I had 2 other people singing with me, so it wasn't just me singing up there, which always helps. But it was kind of interesting being the only instrument, because I can't remember the last time I was the only instrument up there. But we had some issues with the computer that we use for slides for PowerPoint, and so it wouldn't start up. And I think it's a motherboard issue but I'm hoping that it's just as simple as I just need to update the BIOS, and I'm hoping that's all it takes. Initially I thought that it was a custom build from my friend who donated it to our church. Turns out it was actually just a pre-built from Dell. So I need to find out what model it is and see if I can update the BIOS and then see if that fixes the problem, because I think it should. If it doesn't, though, then what I'm probably going to end up doing is I'll take out the motherboard from that, take the motherboard from my 2016 build out of the guest room computer, and then take the motherboard that is currently sitting in a box, which has like my i9 processor and 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM, put that into the guest room computer, and then just, put that old motherboard in the church computer, donate it, because it's going to be, it's going to be better than what's in there anyway, and on top of that, it'll also make it so that we have a functional computer. But I don't think that's going to be necessary. I really think it just the BIOS needs updated. And it's annoying that it comes to that, but it is what it is. For now, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring my laptop to do the slides on Sunday, and then I will see if I can update the BIOS, and then if that doesn't fix the problem, then I'll bring the computer home and do the surgery. But, yeah. Nobody's ever done a brain transplant before. But anyway, let's see, what else was there? Oh yeah, when was that? Oh yeah, Monday. So Monday, of course, was Labor Day, and so I didn't have to work, and my wife and the kids still did school since they didn't have as many days of school last week. And so I decided to utilize the day to go ahead and get all of the segments of my Why I Love PC Gaming video broken up and put up on the channel. So I ended up spending a lot of the day working on that, and yeah. And then otherwise, it's just been gaming and back to work and stuff like that. It's probably something I'm forgetting. Oh, well, this weekend is my wife's birthday, so she has her birthday on Sunday. So we haven't figured out exactly what we're doing for that, mostly in terms of whether I am cooking something one of the nights for her or not, because she has to decide what she wants. Whether I'm cooking something, or we're going to go out for dinner, or if we're going to do one night and then one the other night. Doesn't really matter too much. She hasn't decided yet what she wants to do, so there's that. But yeah, I think that's everything.
Nice. So do you happen to know the motherboard that is in the Dell computer at your church?
No, I was trying to figure it out by looking at it, but I couldn't clearly find any sort of model number on it. And so then I asked my buddy who donated it, and he said that it was a pre-built from Dell. So it sounds like I just need to find out what the model is of the computer itself, and then I can get the BIOS updates that I need.
Right. And I don't know if this will be a problem or not. I know that this has been sort of an issue, or at least with some of their gaming desktops, is that Dell has been using proprietary motherboards. As far as like they're not an actual standard form factor. They're all proprietary and custom, and additionally, the motherboards have been connected to the IOs, so they're actually integrated and work only with their cases, and the cases only work with those motherboards essentially, because the IOs are connected to the motherboard, essentially, more or less.
I mean, from looking at the way everything was connected, it didn't seem like there was anything unusual about the motherboard, and it's not a gaming one, it's just a standard. I think it's just some type of optiplex is really all it is, so it should be
okay. All right.
I'm pretty sure I should be able to just swap out the motherboard and then plug everything in accordingly. The biggest thing I'm not sure about is power supply, but theoretically it shouldn't matter too much because there's not going to be a graphics card in there, so it's not going to have anywhere near as much power drain. Really, the biggest thing is going to be the CPU, how much power drain that's going to have, but I guess I'll just do what I have to do, and hopefully it won't be something that ends up being more complicated than necessary.
Hopefully it's just a BIOS.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all it is, because it seems like the symptoms remind me of when I've had issues with my computer, and apart from the times when I just didn't properly seat the graphics card, which, 100% a user error, it was more just, I mean, once I updated the BIOS, it fixed the problems. So.
Okay. Regarding the controller, oh wait, not what was the question I had exactly. How do those rear buttons feel? I know you said they were smaller, but like, as far as like, is it easier? Do they, because they look like they were sort of like set the same, sort of like same way as the
right. Well,
Steam Deck.
It's
controller.
definitely not as, I mean, they press easily. In some ways I like them because they're a little more clicky, I guess you could say. Because it's just designed differently than the ones for the Steam Deck, but I definitely prefer the size of the ones on the Steam Deck more because I have big hands, and like these things, each one is about, well, it's just not much to press, and I haven't had any issues with them when I've used them, but yeah, they're definitely not as, I would prefer if they were bigger. I just understand realistically that with the size of the controller, they can't really be bigger than they are, or at least not much.
Right. Yeah, I think those were the main questions or comments I had.
Okay. All right. Well, what have you been playing this week?
So last week, I don't remember what day it was, but it was sometime earlier last week. It was, I think, the 16th anniversary or something like that since Batman Arkham Asylum was first released. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go back and play that game some. And I did. Additionally, I decided to try it on hard mode this time. And at first, I was like, all right, cool. You know, we're doing some stuff. But I forgot that hard mode disables the little counter signals that enemies give you, so I had to get used to reading their body language as they were throwing attacks at me, which has been the biggest issue that I've had so far with playing through the game. I mean, for the most part, the game hasn't felt too bad, although reaching Bane was the first brick wall that I've encountered so far, just because he just hits so hard.
Yeah.
You take so much damage now in hard mode that 2 or 3 hits will pretty much down you, more or less. And while you're seeing the final version where I actually beat him, I probably lost to him about 11 or 12 times. I had to redo that fight just because it was annoying. And there were several times where after he runs into a wall, you think you have enough time to land in a hit, maybe 2, but sometimes he just backhands you occasionally before you even land the first hit, and you just take so much damage that I'm just like, well, there goes that run now at this point. And yeah, and then eventually once the other enemies start jumping in, that's when it really gets to be a problem, since, again, not being able to see the counter lights flash up above their heads, you know, it's like you're worried about what Bane's doing, but you're also trying to like make sure no one's trying to hit you at the same time. And it's definitely been interesting in that aspect. So I've gotten about halfway through the game so far, I'd say, based upon what I remember, and honestly, the game isn't necessarily as, I mean, if I am at the halfway point, the game isn't necessarily as long as I remember it being, which, I mean, not saying that's a bad thing, but, you know, it's definitely making it a good, enjoyable experience. And also, you know, while I guess going back to this game is a bit of an adjustment just because you lose a lot of the later abilities, or I guess more common skills that you don't have here. For example, one, or at least one of the things that I really have to adjust to are some of the quick gadget skills. For example, I really enjoy using the grapnel quick skill attack, and in like later games it's L2 plus triangle or Y, whereas in this game it's double tapping R2, which is really different and difficult. And then certain things like being able to do a beatdown on enemies, you don't have that now. So, you know, if you're going to attack an enemy after you stun them, you're really just going to do 1 or 2 hits at best, and you can't really just try to quickly take them out that way. So that's definitely something different as well. And of course, you don't have the grapnel accelerator, but granted, it's not really an open world like the other games were, so it doesn't really matter too much on that end. But I mean, overall, I still think the game is great. It has an atmosphere that the other games don't have.
Yeah.
And considering the fact that, even considering that you know, the Scarecrow is the main, or I guess technically one of the main boss enemies in Arkham Knight, this game still has a more eerie atmosphere and tone that Knight doesn't have.
Yeah.
And so it really makes me appreciate it. So while mechanically it does take some adjusting to, I think as a whole, it's still a great game that you can go back and play years later. So I'm definitely enjoying my time so far. I think I'll try seeing this through to completion since I've gone through a good chunk of the game already. B, I want to see if I can get the rest of the achievements, but that also is going to require doing the challenge maps, which are good. Those have never been my forte, especially the stealth ones. So we'll see about that. But all in all, I've definitely just been enjoying myself with the game. And then next up, I played some Minecraft, and part of it was because I had been trying. I had seen a skin customizer site, so I've just been like working on creating a few custom skins here and there. And I just said, I'll just go ahead, upload, and try playing the game some. But primarily what I've been doing is just trying to explore some more and also do something that I initially did when I played Minecraft, or at least when I played it on the Pocket Edition, which was just trying to create a system of tunnels underneath my house, so that way it's easier to just traverse around and also find new areas. Biggest problem I've had so far, though, is that, like the Dwarves of Moria, I've delved too deeply and too greedily, to the point where I have encountered... Essentially, yes. I mean, maybe... Well, essentially, it's my Balrog, because I've ran into several creepers right at the ends and nearly blew me up several times as a result. Although one time I was digging, trying to just get some coal, and I thought the item dropped down to a block, and I would just step down and grab it. What happened was I dug right down into a pit, so I just fell straight down to my death, essentially, and I had to find a way to dig around so I can get to the ground level and then get my stuff, because I did have a lot of items on me, especially equipment that was pretty useful and hard to replace at the time. So that's essentially what I've been doing with the game so far. I don't know if I'll do too much more of it right now. It was really just trying to go back and do a couple of things here and there. Although I might end up getting back into it just because I know over the weekend I'm going to be seeing my niece and nephew, and they're probably going to want to play the game now since I told them I had it set up. But we'll see what happens on that end. But after all of that, I've been playing some more Expedition 33, and I accomplished some of my goals for the game so far. I've gotten through a good chunk of the Endless Tower. I think I'm probably at 9-2 at trial 9-2, and I think I was looking up online trying to see how many there were. I think it goes up to 11 or 12 or something like that. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, it's 11, and there's 3 trials per floor.
Okay.
So 33
so
altogether.
I'm getting there. Okay. Genius. But I am getting close to the end there. It's definitely been an issue with some of these chromatic enemies, especially just certain ones where there have been enemies where even when they were just standard non-boss non-chromatic enemies, I just could not get their patterns down. So having to face them here with larger health pools has been aggravating. I mean, thankfully, because I've got Mael's, better skills and abilities, it's helped a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But despite that, it's just been a bit of a challenge. But because of that, I decided to go back and see if I could find the recommended weapon, or at least the recommended endgame weapon for Monoko. So I went around trying to figure out where this place was, and eventually I just looked it up and said, all right, where is, I think, Endless Forest, something like that, Endless Forest area. And I went there, went exploring, found the boss. At this point, I'm powerful enough that he wasn't too much of an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Got his weapon, and that was great. So I have that, and I went and took out a couple other bosses that I had missed on the way throughout the game, and I'm decided to go back to the Painted Workshop to take on Lampmaster. That, despite everything I have so far with my characters and their skills and their levels, the biggest issue is just trying to get the timing down for his attacks, because several of his attacks are just so delayed where I think, okay, now's when I parry. Nope, too early.
Yeah.
All right, how about now? Nope, too late. And then out of, say, 4 attacks, I only parry one of them, essentially. And it's worse with, it's just worse when he has the one attack where he swings with both arms, and all of his arms, not just both, because he's got multiple ones. So that's the worst one trying to take care of. And then eventually I just said, let me just try dodging at least, so I can at least survive. That's helping, but it's not doing too much, and I don't know. And and while he probably still isn't dealing as much damage, and I probably should go back and try to work on or readjust his skills, I only have Monoko right now in my party because I'm trying to help get all of the Nevron feat for him, and Lampmaster is one of the enemies that he needs it, so I'm really just trying to help him out there, but at the same time, he's not really helping me out too much right now with the fights, and I'm just gonna have to keep going back and forth, and I might have to try swapping out a few other characters as well, to see what they can do. I mean, really the only character I could swap out is just Verso, because Mael, she has to stay in the party because she's the heavy hitter. I mean, I might try Lune, but I don't know so far. But yeah, that's essentially where I am right now with the game. I am considering going back to Renoir's drafts at some point, because I feel like maybe I could start tackling some stuff there,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually getting my way to the end. I at least want to find the next flag, because I know that at least if I can find it, I can go right in there and then just fast travel to that point, so I can keep making progress. But I've only been able to go in, try to push my way through to the merchant there, and then just ran out of there as soon as possible, because I ran out of healing items at that point. But yeah, so I might go back eventually and try swinging at that again. But yeah, that is everything that I've been playing thus far.
All right. Well, I definitely have to say one of the major things you got to do with your builds is just focus on finding things that will improve the amount of damage you do with Mael in particular. Focus on making her a glass cannon, because that is going to be your best bet to do lots and lots and lots of damage. Because like I'm looking at the video here, and I saw there was one where you did around 1,500,000 some odd damage, and that's a lot, but you can do a lot more. And considering where you're at level wise from what you were telling me last time, I think you should easily be able to deal 30 plus million damage in a hit. So that will help a lot with getting through some of those tougher bosses, especially once you get to the super bosses, because like you still have what's her face's area. I can't even think of what her name is, and it would be potentially kind of spoilery for people who haven't played that far into the game, but the second most difficult of the super bosses, which for me, like, she had been built up so much in my head at how difficult she was going to be, I ended up one-shotting her. So it was ridiculously easy because of the fact that I had Mael with such a strong build. So yeah. But anyway, if you decide that you want some help on figuring out what types of abilities, or what types of I can't even remember what the things are called, what the abilities are called in this game. But anyway, there's like a bunch of different things you can equip to really make her super strong. And I found that the best party to have late game was, of course, Mael, Monoko, and CL. Mostly because, like, Monoko, there's abilities there's transformations you can use that, like, will mark enemies, and I can't remember. There was like a combination of 2 attacks that you could do that would mark an enemy, weaken them, and something else. And then with CL, you could I can't remember if you use 1 or 2 abilities with her. I feel like you use 1 ability that raised everybody's stats, and then right after that you use an ability that let her give 4 AP or something over to Mael. So, or no, make her able to act immediately, I think is what it was. And then, like, Mael, I think it was basically after that I would use her really strong attack, Stendhal or whatever it's called. And then right after that, I would use her attack that reduces her HP to 1, which fills up her AP or whatever the thing is called. And then immediately after that, and it also makes it so she can go immediately once she gets below 50% health. And so then with that made it possible to use that same attack again right after. And then there's other things you can do to stack up her power, and she just gets ridiculous in how strong she is. So she's incredibly broken, but in a good way. But yeah. Let's see here, what else? I guess that was it as far as the games that you talked about. Obviously, Arkham Asylum's a classic, and I totally agree on the atmosphere being much more spoopy than the other 2 games. So, good stuff. All right. So as far as what I've been playing this week. So first of all, of course, I wanted to test out that new controller. And the thing that I absolutely had to test were Souls-likes. Or rather, I tested a Souls-like, but then I tested another game that had healing and sprinting, which are like the 2 major functions I like having the back buttons for. So the first thing I tested was another Crab's Treasure, which I also was able to uncap the frame rate. And I was getting frequently anywhere from, like 120 was more or less the floor. Sometimes I was getting, like pretty regularly, I was getting between 140 to 160, sometimes higher. I think a couple times I got into the 190s. It's a beautifully optimized game. It runs super well. But yeah, I just played that for a bit, and the controller worked great for that. Having, the back button for healing items, and then using another one for sprinting was very helpful. The footage here is just me fighting like a mini boss that There's a couple of them around. It's just like this big crab that has a giant comb and uses it basically like a big axe, kind of like I can't remember the area what it's called, but in Dark Souls 3 there's these guys that have they carry like these huge axes, but then they also have like a big basket on their back or something. And it's near the giant that fires the massive arrows, and then once you befriend him, then he shoots it at enemies. But anyway, so yeah, it's like a big axe thing that it slams down, like chops like this, holds it with both hands and chops down. So yeah, the crab does a similar thing with his big comb. So yeah, but I didn't play it a lot. It really was like, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes or something I played, really just for the sake of testing it out with that controller, and worked beautifully. I was very pleased. It actually makes it so that I feel like playing Souls-likes on my desktop is worth doing, because the major reason that I haven't done that much is just because I like having the back button so much, and that's something I only have with the Steam Deck. So typically I would just end up plugging in my Steam Deck through my capture card and, you know, going from there. But yeah. But anyway, so then another game that I tested out was Gotham Knights, just because it also has both healing and sprint functions that are much more easily mapped to back buttons for me personally. And I just played probably like half an hour to an hour as Red Hood was able to get his glider ability, and I didn't do much beyond that. But yeah, you know, good stuff. Still looks and runs great. I haven't really played much though since I did those tests. But yeah. But then what I did also end up both playing heavily and gave me an opportunity to test out the controller, although I didn't really utilize back buttons for it, was Persona 3 Reload. So I finished the main story, and there were some things, I mean, I'm not going to spoil anything, but there were some things that happened that I didn't know happened, because when I had originally played Persona 3 Portable, I hadn't gotten that far in the game. Like, I had basically gotten near the end, but was still quite a ways away from the actual end, like several events away from the end. And so when I had watched the ending, I basically had watched the final fight through the end of the game, but I didn't know about some of the stuff in between, both before, between the point where I had left off and the final fight, and then the stuff that happens between the final fight and the actual end of the game. So there was some stuff I didn't know about, but yeah, I mean, of course it was a great game. I still think Persona 4 Golden and Persona 5 Royal I like better. Even though this one has a lot of quality of life improvements over Persona 5 or Persona 4 Golden, it still definitely has aspects of it that I guess you could say are a little more dated, like ways that they stayed true to the original game, that as a result make the game feel a little like I don't like it quite as much as the next two games. However, that being said, the quality of life improvements are very clearly heavily inspired by Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal, to where it plays it very smoothly. It's just there's certain aspects of, particularly like the social link system in this game compared with how it is in 4 and 5, that haven't aged as well. But otherwise, it's excellent. Visually, it's beautiful. Performance-wise, it's amazing. I mean, the fact that it's easily locked 120 FPS at 1440p on my PC, and then on Steam Deck, it's locked 60. And I do it 720p just for the sake of recording in 16 9 aspect ratio. But yeah, so I very much enjoyed it and highly recommend it. But when I finished that, I went ahead and started up the Episode Aegis DLC, which was formerly known as The Answer, that was specifically only in Persona 3 FES on PS2, because there was 2 versions. Well, there was a total of 3 versions of Persona 3 released before Reload. So there was the original version on PS2, then there was Persona 3 Portable, or I'm sorry, no, Persona 3 FES, which included what's now known as Episode Aegis, but was originally known as The Answer, which is a separate story that takes place after the main game. And then Persona 3 Portable, that didn't have The Answer, but it added the option of using a female version of the protagonist, which made it so that you would have some different social links that you didn't have in the original game, because you have social links with male characters that you didn't have in the original game, and you don't have in Reload either. So, yeah, that being said, with Episode Aegis, it's very heavily dungeon crawling focused. There's no social aspects to it at all. And so it's all just, you're going through essentially a very long dungeon. There's some sort of story elements, which I'm super early, so I haven't gotten much of anything story-wise revealed. It's still very shrouded in mystery. But it's been interesting so far. Honestly, the one thing that was more of an issue for me initially, and still is kind of an issue for me, is that while you can carry over some things from the base game, basically all you really carry over is your Persona Compendium, and even then you can only use the ones that are around your character's level. And of course, as is the case with a lot of these things, it doesn't carry over levels at all. So you basically are going back to much lower level characters with a lot fewer abilities, and that part ended up being more frustrating for me. It's one thing that actually made me stop playing for a little bit. I've kind of gotten back into it since, the past day or so. But for a little bit, it's just like my characters feel so much weaker, and of course I have a lot fewer items. I don't have easy ways to restore stamina points, which are the equivalent of magic power, and so it just ends up being a little more from that standpoint. The plus side, of course, is that this is something that I can easily do while listening to something else, and I can still have the music playing, so I can listen to the music at the same time, and there's some good songs in there. The one thing that is annoying, as with just the soundtrack in general, is that, as far as I can tell, for one, there's no way to purchase it digitally. 2, even if it was included with the soundtrack that you can get on Steam, that soundtrack is locked specifically to an application in the game. You can't minimize it. You have to keep it open. If you Alt-Tab out of it, it pauses. And so I don't know if the soundtrack for this DLC is even part of it. I haven't looked into it. I mean, obviously, I was able to, through a workaround, I was able to get the music from the main game downloaded on my PC to where I have that. For this, I don't believe the tracks are included as part of the soundtrack, and as far as I can tell, there's basically no way to buy it except for paying scalpers. So I ended up just downloading the soundtrack separately. I found a place where I could get it, and I downloaded it, and I'm going to enjoy it that way, because you could have done this one simple thing, Atlas. Just make it easy for people to buy and listen to this soundtrack for both the base game and the DLC, but no. You have to make it exclusive to an application or streaming services. No thank you. I will just, if you make it available to purchase later on, then I will buy it. But until then, I'm just going to listen to the ones that I downloaded separately, because that's the only option they gave me. But anyway, so yeah, I'm enjoying it ish. The good thing about this though is that at least there's no like calendar thing to where you're having to deal with time limits. So it's basically just you spend however much time you spend in the dungeon, and then when you have to heal, you go back to the dorm, and then rinse and repeat. And that's until you get all the way through it. I know there will be some story beats and that sort of thing, but yeah. One thing I do want to point out, so as far as the achievements go for this and for the base game, I looked into it, and at first I thought that I was missing quite a few achievements. It turns out there's actually only one I'm actually missing from the base game, and that is maxing out all social links, which you have to do within that time of the main game. You don't have opportunities to do it after that. So in order to do that, I'll have to replay the entire game on New Game Plus, because all of my stats are maxed out so that I can activate social links earlier than I could in the game otherwise, because my stats weren't leveled up all the way. So at some point I'll do that. There is a small chance that maybe whenever I finish episode Igus that I will go back and do New Game Plus, because I would like to get that last achievement, because the rest of the achievements are all tied specifically to episode Igus, and it seems like they're all basically automatic as long as you play through it. And I don't think it's very long. I don't know exactly how long it is, but I'm pretty sure it's much, much, much shorter than the main game, because the main game I think took me around 70 hours to get all the way through. So yeah, that's it for Persona. While I was kind of in a bit of a funk, I guess I should say, after I finished this and I had started the DLC, and I just wasn't quite feeling the DLC. I was in kind of a funk, so I decided I would try out a couple other games. First thing I ended up trying out was Metal Gear Solid 3. That is the original version, or rather the Master Collection version on PC. And of course, runs great. 1440p, locked 60 frames per second. Unfortunately, I did not find anything to unlock the frame rate. There probably is something somewhere, but I wasn't finding it, so I just didn't bother worrying about it. But I basically just played through the prologue. I don't know how much I'll actually play the game, because like the controls feel a little, they're harder to get used to. Mostly because of the fact that the most recent Metal Gear game I played was Metal Gear Solid 5, which has much better controls. I mean, it's just like, it feels really good. And this one, while it technically in many ways feels the best of the early Metal Gear games, or the early Metal Gear Solid games, it still doesn't feel anywhere near as good as 5. So yeah, we'll see how much, if I actually play it more. I haven't really decided. I know it runs just as well on the Steam Deck, because of the 60 lock, but I haven't messed with it on Steam Deck since I tried it out a while back. So I think now that I'm more comfortable with the controls after I had a chance to mess with it playing on my desktop, then more likely than not, I shouldn't have any problems if I decide to play it on the Steam Deck. And that's more likely where I would play it. It's possible I may play a little bit on my PC, like during my stack up stream or something, but honestly, just haven't decided. But I was getting the itch to play, mostly because of Delta being out, and of course it's like, it has all the quality of life improvements to where I'm sure it's great from that standpoint, but I'm just not satisfied with the way it runs right now. And while I don't know for sure how it would run on my desktop compared with um, other PCs. I decided it wasn't really worth going for, obviously, at this point. So, but um, yeah. So then another game that I decided to try out on my Steam Deck, which I finally grabbed on sale, was Hollow Knight. Now I haven't played much. In fact, I played like less than an hour. It runs amazing. I mean, locked 90 frames per second, looks incredible, HDR, OLED, all that good stuff. Actually, I don't know if it actually uses HDR or not. I can't remember. But I mean, it looks and runs very, very well. And I only played just a tiny bit though. I basically played long enough to get to the first, like, I don't know if it's, I think it'd probably just be considered a mini boss rather than a proper boss. And I got decently way through it, but I only tried him, I think 2 or 3 times and ended up dying each time. So I don't know. I just wasn't entirely feeling it, and I don't think there's anything wrong with the game. Like, mechanically, it seems very solid. I haven't figured out if there's actually a way to dodge. It seems like there should be, but if it's just jumping, then that's going to take getting used to whenever I actually decide to play this. But I just wanted to try it out, and, I got it on discount, so it was worth it from that standpoint. But yeah. So, like I said, I was very much in a funk, and was not really, like, enjoying much of anything in terms of the games. And then someone was talking about Warhammer Bolt Gun, which is a game that's been on my list for a while as something I'd like to check out, because it's, like a good boomer shooter, kind of pixelated and stuff, but it just looks like a lot of fun. Like, I would really enjoy it. But it's one where I wasn't in any rush to get it, mostly because of the fact that I still have, like, Doom Eternal to finish, and a couple, like, at least 1 or 2 other boomer shooters that I already own that I would like to play. So I decided to boot up Doom Eternal. And I finished up the level that I had been stuck on, or, that I hadn't finished yet. And then played through the level right after that as well. And I played it entirely on my desktop. Or, well, no. I played it a bit on my Steam Deck, and then the rest of it I played on my desktop. And, of course, on my desktop, it runs beautifully. Steam Deck, I get pretty close, if not a locked 60 frames per second, pretty close to a locked. Either way is great, but this footage here is all from my desktop, and the great thing about it was that in the process of all the editing for that for the new intro video, I was able to figure out how to make HDR footage look the way it's supposed to. And so this footage here has the HDR, and it looks glorious. It looks so good. I mean, all the settings are maxed out, minus ray tracing, which of course I kept turned off. But I mean, like, the range with the colors looks amazing. The reflections, the lighting, just like everything about this game, it looks so good. And of course, it plays incredibly well. I'm not as rusty as I was when I started playing, because it had been a while and I didn't remember the controls super well. And then, of course, since I hadn't played with mouse and keyboard, apart from the little bit of testing I did a couple weeks ago, it took me a while to get used to the difference in controls from Doom 2016. And yeah, but the bit that I played, I definitely enjoyed it. I mean, I'm playing on Ultra Violence, which is the hardest difficulty you get initially until you've beaten Ultra Violence and you have access like Ultra Nightmare and whatnot. But yeah, so it's I definitely died a lot. Most of the times I died, it's usually like, oh, I'll get stuck on a wall, or I'll get stuck on a wall and then surrounded by a few enemies, and it's just dumb stuff like that. But yeah, the footage here is just me doing a boss fight and the follow-up boss fight with that. And the interesting thing is that one thing that this game does that think I don't think it was the case in 2016 is that you'll fight a really strong enemy as a boss, and then later on that enemy will come back and they'll just be like a standard enemy that you'll sometimes have 3 or 4 of them at one time. And I mean, they're technically just as strong, but because of the fact that you have better weapons and more abilities and stuff like that, they're not as difficult. It's possible maybe the boss versions have more health. I don't know. But either way, it's yeah, the particular boss enemy I faced in this one, I forgot how much of a pain he was when you face him at first. Because I remember like later on when you face him and you're stronger and have better guns and more abilities and more health and armor and all that, it's considerably easier. But one of the things that I got, well, for one, I got my super shotgun, which is great. Having the double-barreled shotgun makes a big difference, even though I can't yet do two shots in quick succession like you can later on. But I do have the meat hook attachment for it, which is basically like a hook shot. And then if once you've used that enough, then you gain the ability to when you hook to an enemy, it sets them on fire. And as they're on fire, as you can also do with the flame belch item, weapon, it causes them to drop armor pickups. So it's pretty useful for that. If you are running low on armor, you can just hook shot to any enemy, and as it's burning them, it'll drop armor armor drops for you and stuff like that. So it's good stuff. But yeah, there's not much else to say. I don't know how much I'm going to be playing this right now, but it definitely helped me to kind of get out of that funk. Just playing something that was very different from what I had been playing, and let me kill some stuff, play a very high frame rate game, and just it's a good time. I mean, it's difficult, but not necessarily in a bad way. It's fun. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this week. I don't think I played anything else. Well, I guess I will just briefly mention, even though I don't have any footage here, I did boot up Chrono Trigger just to get some footage for the intro, and I don't think I booted up anything else. I think that was it.
Okay. So with the hook shot for Doom Eternal, does that count as a weapon, or is it just sort of I guess for lack of better words, a standard attack, kind of like how you can punch enemies
Yeah,
in a
it's
sense?
basically a standard attack.
Okay.
Because you can use it even if you don't have ammo in your super shotgun, which is helpful
Okay.
because
Okay.
you can hook shot to an enemy and then chainsaw them from the hook shot, so that you can get more ammo. Since this game you have to chainsaw enemies to pick up ammo, where um, at least whenever there's not ammo pickups in the environment, because there will be some, but those run out after a while, and then the way that you get more ammo is by chainsawing enemies.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I was just wondering because I was trying to wonder if that was gonna be something where similar to the chainsaw, something where you could use a limited amount of times
Mm-hmm.
unless you had to get some more ammo for or whatnot, or if it's something that you could just use continuously,
Yeah.
which definitely works. Also, a question, since it's something that I have seen and have heard discussed here and there. What do you think of the sort of platforming of segments of the game, since that one sort of has more of an emphasis than 2016?
Right. I mean, I've never had a problem with them. Occasionally I end up just making dumb mistakes with it, but for the most part, it's never really bothered me. But I've always liked uh, platforming, at least when the platforming is good. Sometimes the platforming is not that good. Um, But as long as it works well, then I usually enjoy it. It's just occasionally it doesn't. Like Superland was one where I was the platforming is just a little floaty for my taste, but otherwise, usually first person platforming I like just fine. Though I will say sometimes the platforming in Metroid Prime was not always the best.
Mm.
Third person
That's
platforming is
understandable.
definitely better in general, but first person can still be fun.
Yeah. Going back to Persona 3 Reload. So with the DLC, is that something completely separate from the
Mm,
game,
yeah.
or is it something? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
basically
Because
it's you can load into a separate from the main menu. You just choose change episode, and then it takes you to the alternate thing, which technically you can do at any point. But obviously because it takes place after the main game, I obviously did it after I finished the game.
okay, then yeah, that's really confusing then, because when you mentioned the fact that your level is capped essentially, with
Well,
going
it's
through
not
it, I was wondering.
capped. It's just you start at a lower level. So basically
Okay.
it's like, oh, they haven't the story explanation, and doesn't spoil anything. It's just, we haven't been uh, actively spending time in Tartarus anymore, and so we've kind of lost some of what we had before. It's like if you don't use your muscles enough, if you don't keep working at them, eventually they'll disappear.
Okay, I mean, from a story stance, it makes sense, but from a gameplay stance, I'm
Right.
a little lost, because I was thinking that the fact that maybe it's something you were meant to start early on in the game, like earlier on into the game, sort of like wanted you to do it, so it was sort of like trying to force you into that thing. But yeah, I don't know. So I mean, I guess then, because you start off at a lower level, would that really make it more difficult to start doing that earlier in the game? Um, I
Well,
mean, do you think so
I
far?
mean, none of your levels carry over because it's a completely separate story. I mean,
Okay.
it's connected in terms of, like the story is connected, but it's not something where, um, I mean, none of your levels carry over from the main game. It's just basically, I think the only thing that carries over is the Persona Compendium.
Is there anything from the DLC that can transfer over to the base game, or is that also just like
I don't
locked
think
separately?
so, but um, because yeah, I don't think there's any personas in the DLC that don't exist in the base game, and I don't think there's anything you get uh from the DLC that would in any way benefit you in the base game.
Okay. And then I guess, sort of as a follow up question would be, so I guess structure wise, is this completely different than how, I guess, whatever DLC in Persona 5 is, at least with the Royal Edition?
Yes, because Persona 5 they incorporated into the main game.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. And did 4 have any sort of like special DLC chapters
Well,
or
it
levels or
was
anything
it
like that?
wasn't DLC. And in fact, 5 wasn't even really actually DLC. It was just 5. You had 5, the vanilla version of 5, and then you had Persona 5 Royal, which was a completely separate release with a bunch of quality of life improvements and um, a couple of additional characters added, and then some additional story elements that uh, could be included in the main story late in the game if you met certain qualifications. Like if you did certain things, then those story things would appear, and otherwise it would just keep the story as it was normally, other than the fact that it introduced a couple of new characters and some new mechanics and stuff.
Okay.
And
And
four,
so
four basically did the same thing, except that Well, yeah, it did the same thing because the original version of 4 was on PS2, and then 4 Golden was on Vita first, and that's where they added an additional character or two. I think it was just one character, and some quality of life improvements. And then if you met certain criteria, then you would unlock an additional dungeon and some additional story beats, as well as an epilogue.
Okay. Okay, cool. And then I guess my one last question has to do with Hollow Knight, and so did the game sort of have a tutorial, or do you just like jump right in? Okay, so
You just
jump
jump
right
in and
Okay.
start playing. I mean, the controls are basically what you would expect, at least so far. I mean, using Y to or X to attack, and A to jump, and um, that's about the extent of it so far from what I've found. There may be some other controls that I just haven't picked up on. I guess it taught you how to heal, but that's about the extent of it.
Okay. Yeah, I was just really curious because when you said there's, or at least you haven't, or at least from what you've seen so far, there hasn't been a dodge mechanic, and I'm just thinking that's very odd for Souls like to not have a dodge mechanic
I
at
mean,
all.
it's very possible that I just haven't picked up on it. I might try booting it up again and just check and see, because it seems like there should be a dodge button, but
Mhm.
it might. I mean, you can also jump pretty high, so maybe your dodging is just jumping over enemies, like it would be in Metroid in general. I don't know.
Okay. Well, that is everything that I have.
All right, good stuff. Well, let's get into the news. So, first thing I definitely want to talk about here is how there is a rumor going around, and this is kind of based off of previous discussions we had, that there is going to be, of course, a PlayStation 6 handheld next generation in addition to their regular console. But the rumor has expanded a bit from Moore's Law is Dead, saying that this is supposed to be dockable, like the Nintendo Switch, and supposedly, this part definitely taken with a grain of salt, is going to be much more powerful than the Xbox Ally X. So, um, I guess what are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see, and I mean, as far as just having a dedicated PlayStation handheld, I'm for that. I'm for that. I mean, I wouldn't get one, but I'm for that. Having
Mhm.
another device, having more options for consumers is a good thing. And this is what the PS Portal should have been in the first place. Its own dedicated uh handheld, not something that you just stream from your PS5, not something you stream from uh PS Now or whatever,
Mhm.
the services you're using. It should have just been its own dedicated handheld. And sure, if it had streaming functionality included, that's fine. But just let it be its own device that you can play anywhere without requiring an internet connection. So that's great. And, having that dockable feature is pretty cool. And I think it's something that we're seeing more, I guess, to a degree, kind of like as a standard for handhelds,
Mhm.
because of course the Switch, that pretty much set the precedent for the whole thing. And with the PC gaming handhelds, you can either buy an official dock or use a third-party dock, and you can connect that to a monitor or a TV or something like that, and play your games like that. So the fact that this alleged PlayStation Portable 2 is dockable, that makes sense to me. That's good. That's fine. I have no problems with that at all. Um, it's kind of interesting though, because if it's going to be, releasing alongside the PS6, I just find that interesting because you would have a fully dedicated console, completely stationary, and then you would have a sort of hybrid handheld as well that sort of has the same purpose as the Switch. So that's definitely interesting to have that sort of be a companion device to an actual console. As far as the speculation rumors of it being more powerful than an Ally X, I'm taking that with quite a bit of salt. I mean, considering the fact that the Ally X is pretty much using near latest AMD mobile chips. If it's not the latest, it's close to being the latest. I'll put it like that. So, unless Sony's waiting to develop the next one because they want to get the next version iteration, sure, I could probably understand that. But I think just saying it's gonna be way more powerful than the Ally X, I'm just gonna have to press X to doubt on that one because I don't think it's gonna be that big. I mean, even if it is more powerful, I doubt, as things are right now with what we have on the market, I doubt it's gonna be like all that much more powerful. Maybe 8 to 14% more powerful, but the way they're making it sound, it's like it's 25-30% more powerful and stuff. I'm just like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
But obviously all this is speculation. I still, even if it isn't everything that we see right now with the rumors and stuff, I feel confident that Sony is making another handheld, especially because handhelds are making a revival across the board, and I think this is the perfect time because the market wants these handhelds, from every sort of area, whether you're in console, whether you're on PC, there's a handheld for you. I mean, Switch, it's a handheld in the console. The Ally X is a handheld aimed towards Xbox, although granted, it's still just technically a handheld PC, just with the Xbox logo slapped on it. And then, of course, just your standard handheld gaming PC. So Sony is the only one that doesn't have one right now. I mean, of course, again, you technically have the Portal, but it's not a dedicated actual device. It's just a tablet with barely any functionality that only streams. So they really could use that, and it's gonna be interesting seeing people who were just going full defense mode for the Portal saying, see, it's a great device, it's okay that it doesn't have its own games and you need to connect it to your PS5 and have internet to play it. It's still a great handheld. I'm having a good time playing it. And then by the time the PS6 handheld comes out, everyone say, yeah, this is great, Sony did a great job here, this is great, Sony, good, keep up the good work. And it's like, you could have had this the last time had you told Sony you didn't want the Portal. But I digress. But yeah, I hope this is I hope this is true. I hope this is coming out, but I just doubt that it's as powerful as they say it's going to be. But, if it is dockable, I think that's great. So that's another thing that I'm hoping comes out of this. But yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to say, I definitely think this is real. I think that at least in terms of it actually existing and being dockable, that seems very likely. I mean, Sony has a history of just copying other people. That's just the reality. They do that. They try to pretend that it's something unique and brand new, but the reality is they copy their competition, and there's nothing wrong with that if they make a good product. That being said, I'm very skeptical that it's going to, first of all, that it's going to quote unquote crush the Xbox Ally X. Even if it is more powerful, which even that I'm kind of skeptical about, the only way that they can do this reasonably is if they charge more. And it's possible, yes, they could just get very aggressive on the price and sell it at a loss with the idea that hopefully they'll sell more software and services and everything to make up for it. But with the way they've been doing things lately, especially with their pricing, I'm just very skeptical that it's going to be anything like that. Now, the other thing that we have to take into consideration is that while Moore's Law is Dead has a good track record in terms of the hardware existing that he talks about, saying, oh, this is coming, and then it actually comes, in terms of the actual specs, that's where he's doesn't have the best track record. And so I very much take with a grain of salt what he says about the specs. Now, I'm totally fine if I'm wrong. Like, hey, if it ends up being way more powerful than the Xbox Ally X, that could be very good, because then hopefully that would encourage Microsoft to lower the price, which would, improve, make more competition. But I think that a lot of it, especially when it's PlayStation fans and fanboys saying that believing this, it's a lot of hopium. And they're just, I think that even if you can definitively prove that it isn't as powerful as the Xbox Ally X, they will refuse to believe it. The other thing is, I think about, like, when you try to tell certain PlayStation fanboys in particular that the PS5 Pro is not equal to a 4070. A lot of times they just won't accept that. They'll keep saying that it is. Now, on paper, it should theoretically be as powerful as the 4070 because it does have 16 gigs of RAM. It's technically... So, my understanding from looking into this more is that the base PS5 had 16 gigs of shared RAM. Now, and about 2 gigs of that was being used for the system. When it came to the PS5 Pro, the 16 gigs of VRAM was dedicated, and then they had an additional 2 gigs of RAM added separately so that could handle, like, the system software and all that. So, from that standpoint, theoretically, it's on a similar level to the 4070. The problem is that 16 gigs of RAM, just because you have 16 gigs of VRAM, it's not necessarily going to be the same across different systems. Because, like, for example, I'm trying to think of what some other examples are of graphics cards that have 12 gigs of RAM besides the 2080 Ti. Because the 2080 Ti, which is what I have, has 12 gigs of VRAM. But there are newer cards that have 12 gigs of VRAM and are more efficient and are better cards. They're stronger cards. And I think, and from what it seems like with the PlayStation 5 Pro in particular, even though it has technically 16 gigs of VRAM, it's not necessarily going to be as powerful as a 4070 or as something newer than that. Especially like the 9070 XT. That is a very efficient, very good, solid card from AMD. The other issue is that there's a huge CPU bottleneck because of the fact that the CPU hasn't changed from the PS5 to the PS5 Pro. It's exactly the same. They haven't changed it at all. And so when you have the CPU as a problem, then your GPU is going to suffer because it's not going to be able to reach its full potential at that point. It's kind of like with my 2016 build. The initial build, I had the GTX 980, which is a 4 gigs of VRAM, and then I had an i5 6500, and an Intel i5 6500, which was an older CPU, and it was nowhere near as strong. And so I ended up with situations where my GPU wasn't using its full potential because it was CPU limited. And so games like Assassin's Creed Origins, for example, when I was playing that initially on there would be times where the textures for NPCs wouldn't load in, and so you'd have people basically looking like paper dolls until the textures loaded in because it was CPU bottlenecked. Now, once I upgraded my CPU, then I didn't have that problem anymore. It was running a lot better, and I wasn't having that issue with the textures not loading in fast enough. I mean, the game was running at 60 frames per second, but it was still having that issue of the textures not loading in properly. And so that's where your big problem is when it comes to the PS5 and the PS5 Pro, is that your CPU is so weak, comparatively speaking, especially compared to what your GPU can do, that it limits those games that are very CPU heavy. And those open world games in particular, that's the reason why you can't get as good of visuals and performance as you would get otherwise. And so I very much think, just based on what we've seen from Sony in the past and, obviously cost cutting measures, that even though the PlayStation 6 handheld and everything else will probably be, I mean, it's going to be reasonably powerful. It's probably going to be much more powerful than the Steam Deck, for example. The problem is that it's not going to be as strong as it could be because it's going to have those limits. And not just with the handheld, but also with supposedly there's going to be a PlayStation 6 S, an actual like smaller model, and that but unlike the Series X compared with the Series S, it's not going to have lower memory. As far as I know from what I've been able to see, is that it's going to be okay. Actually, no, that's not correct. Um, so it's supposed to be, at least according to Moore's Law is Dead, it is 2.5 gigs of RAM on the base console, the S version, and the handheld, and then it would be 5 gigs of RAM on the PS6, on the big PS6. Okay, so I was totally wrong on my understanding. So I misread what the chart was saying. So the chart was saying it's the cost of RAM per gigabyte is the first line, and the second line is the total amount of RAM. So the total amount of RAM isn't saying that's all VRAM. It's saying that that's the total amount of RAM combined between RAM and VRAM. So having 40 gigs total of RAM and VRAM combined, that is much more believable. So
More believable.
most of it wouldn't be
Still,
allocated. I mean, because you can get you can put 32 gigs of RAM in a Steam Deck. Not easy to do, but people have done it.
yeah.
So if you're going based on that, that makes more sense, because then it could be more along the lines of, you have, let's just say 24 gigs in the PS6 and 16 gigs in the PS6 handheld and the PS6 S. And then the rest is just system RAM.
Yeah. I still think it's just high for a handheld, just like without adding to it. I think it's still kind of high to have a total number be 40.
Yeah.
But that it's still, like you said, still more believable though than just having 40 be for dedicated VRAM.
So speaking of handheld devices, you want to talk about what's going on with the Steam Deck 2?
Of course. So we have had some more news about and of course we've talked about this before about Steam hardware, but there's a new rumor. This is coming from Insider Gaming, and specifically this is coming from a hardware leaker who has had a reputation for leaking stuff accurately, known as Kepler L2, who says that the Steam Deck 2 is currently planned for 2028. This was posted on NeoGAF, and in the discussion, the device is quite a while away from happening, and this is sort of like in line with what we've seen before about Valve saying that they wanted to wait until there is significant, or at least there's significant increase in hardware to justify making a new handheld. But yeah, so like let's see if I have the actual thing here. yeah, so like really all he said was when discussing like all the other stuff with different handhelds, which is Steam Deck 2 is 2028. Um, and that's essentially it. I have thoughts, of course, but what are yours regarding this?
Well, I'm fine with it. I'm actually quite happy with the idea of it not being till 2028 because, for one, that means that it will probably be more powerful, for what you pay for it. On top of that, it will probably also be, I mean, it also makes it so that I don't, I have plenty of time to enjoy my Steam Deck until then because, uh, I mean, of course, whenever the Steam Deck 2 inevitably comes out and I eventually get one, which, let's be real, probably will be at launch. Um, I'm not getting rid of my Steam Deck. I'm just gonna pass it on and let either my wife or my kids or both use it, and maybe even use it for some games, and then for anything that's more demanding, do the Steam Deck 2. But um, yeah, I'm perfectly fine with waiting until 2028. I think that would be great because that gives plenty of time to just wait it out and save up for it too. So yeah, that's it. That's all I have.
Yeah, I agree. This definitely is fine with me. And I mean, it makes sense too. Valve hasn't said anything about a Steam successor for the original slash OLED models, so it makes sense that we pushed out that far. Even waiting that long, and considering the fact that, I mean, as we just talked about it, you know, Sony using supposedly better chips than the LIX, then this one would definitely be more in line with that, because I think we just said that the PS6 would probably come out in 2027. This, if it's coming out in 2028, then it definitely would have, supposedly better hardware. I mean, to keep costs down, Valve might not be using the absolute latest chips, but they might be using something closer to the latest. So they might be, use a generation behind just to save costs, so that way they don't have to charge as much for the Steam Deck. But even still, it would be a huge boost from what we're using right now. And yeah, I mean, overall, it's been a good year. I mean, it's been what, 4 years since the first Steam Deck released, or is it 5? Can't remember. Off the top of my head.
2022 is when the original Steam Deck came out.
Oh, okay. So never mind. That's 3 then. Okay, so then yeah, so that would be about good 6 years then of a life span. So, all right, yeah, that's not too bad. Um, yeah. So I mean, I definitely look forward to, like you said, it'll probably be day one, considering the fact that both the original and the OLED models, proved to be good handheld devices. And I mean, I initially waited for the first one just to see what the reviews were going to be like, but after buying that and the OLED version, I think it's definitely going to be safe to say I'll just pre-order it for day one, but definitely wait to save up on that one. But yeah, look forward to it, but definitely can wait for right now.
So something else that came up here that was actually really positive news. So Helldivers came out on Xbox. Helldivers 2 came out on Xbox last week. Currently, it is on the sales charts. The base version, which is $40, is number 1 in paid games on the Xbox sales charts. And number 3 is the Super Citizen Edition, which is the $60 version. Apparently, Xbox gamers don't buy games, but they definitely bought Helldivers 2. So, what are your thoughts?
Well, this is obviously a very brilliant show of democracy in action, because, the gamers voted with their wallets in the name of Super Earth.
Yeah.
And, to conquer the planets, So it's definitely great seeing this, and it similar to how Xbox games sold well, on PlayStation. Um, it just goes to show you that, hey, people outside of the main consoles will actually buy your games if you put the games on consoles.
Yep.
Who'da thunk it? And I definitely think that Sony is definitely seeing this and saying, huh, so this little test run worked. Maybe we should put some other games on Xbox now. Like, it's definitely that same thing that happened where they did the thing with PC and said, we're just gonna test the waters, with maybe just like this one game here, maybe one or two games here, something just to see what happens. And they sold well on PC, and so Sony said, yeah, we want more of that. So I definitely think Sony's gonna see this and say, yeah, we want more of that, and just start putting more games on it. And now, of course, it's not gonna be day and date. You're not gonna be seeing maybe the same games hit Xbox that have hit PC, but more are gonna be coming. Like that like Sony has tasted blood now. All right, they are filled with ecstasy. Okay, they see. So this is what Microsoft has been doing the whole time. Why didn't we do this? Like you said earlier, Sony likes to copy what their competition's doing, and now they're copying what Microsoft is doing, and this is just gonna keep going on from here. But it's great to see this type of support. Some people would say, oh, like you said before, Xbox fans don't buy games. Well, clearly they do. So there's it definitely shows that there is an audience here who will buy these games. So if Sony decides to port an older game, maybe Horizon Zero Dawn, maybe Spider-Man remastered, I definitely think we could see another potential good run of sales there. And I'm definitely all for that. If people have options to buy these games on whatever platform they want, it's definitely a good thing. And we're definitely getting closer to the end of the long age of exclusivity, where it's just going to be a matter of, I buy this on this platform because I like these features, rather than I buy this platform because of exclusives. And that is glorious to see, because that means that these manufacturers are just going to have to compete with the actual capabilities of their hardware, and are going to have to innovate and offer special features, rather than just say, if you have to buy my box, even though it's nearly the exact same as the other box, but just because we have games that can't be played on the other box because of legal reasons. So we're reaching a point where that's ending, and that's just great. And I'm just happy to see it. I'm glad that the game sold well. Similar to, and it's definitely similar to how when Helldivers released on PC, it also sold very well and was ranking high on release. And so Sony definitely, again, is seeing that, hey, why aren't we doing the smart thing here? Let's keep doing the smart thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely good stuff.
Indeed. Yeah, I'm very, very happy to see this. I mean, who knows what the actual sales numbers are, but I mean, this is exactly like it's a do bro kind of game. It's like perfect for the Xbox crowd, and it's multiplayer, which, I mean, really, from what I've heard a lot, is that Xbox has always been more of a multiplayer console than anything else. Like, people play a lot of multiplayer games. And not that they don't do it on PlayStation or PC or anything like that, but it's just a good fit. It's a good fit for the console, and of course, um, we'll have to wait and see whether or not Sony actually puts more games on Xbox. But I'm gonna say it's very likely. I think it's not gonna be opening the floodgates necessarily, but I also didn't think they were gonna open the floodgates with putting games on PC. And I mean, yeah, 2020 was like one game, and then I think 2021 we had one or two games, and then it was like start 2022 we got like 2 or 3 games, and then 2023 we had like 6 games, and then 2024 same thing, a lot of games. I mean, at this point, basically the only like PS5 games that were made primarily for PS5, or at least were PS5 quote unquote exclusives. I mean, apart from the fact that some of them were cross-gen between PS4 and PS5, the only ones that are not currently on PC are Demon Souls, Gran Turismo 7, and Astrobot. I think those are the only 3. I could be wrong. There might be something else I'm forgetting about. I mean, obviously, Ghost of Yotei will be whenever that releases out. And I mean, and Death Stranding is not theirs; it's Kojima's. So, I mean, that one will probably have a much shorter window. At least I would guess, based on what happened with the first Death Stranding. But yeah, there's just not many titles left, and there will come a point, of course, when forgot what I was saying. Where I was going with that. I mean, there will come a point when all of the PS5 exclusive games are on PC, and I mean whether there will be any day and date ones anytime soon, that's yet to be seen. I mean, it may not be until PS6, but I think my prediction is that starting with PlayStation 6, we're going to start seeing day and date. And it's going to be, if not right at launch, probably that gap is going to shrink very quickly. I think that we could potentially see, I mean, if PlayStation 6 doesn't do day and date from the beginning, they'll probably shorten the window to like 6 months. And then, obviously, live service will still be day and date, and probably remasters, I think, will still be day and date. But beyond that, like, the new games, I think there will come a point in the PlayStation 6 generation when new games will be day and date on PC. On Xbox is a different story, but I think that there's going to be more. And I think Xbox is probably going to end up seeing some things sooner rather than later. I mean, like, there's one rumor that's been going around. I think we might have mentioned it, but Returnal is supposedly one of the first games that's supposed to be coming over, which I think would be a great one too, because it's a fantastic game, at least what I played of it. I mean, and obviously, like, the DualSense features are really nice, but they're not needed for the game. They're cool. They work well. I really like the way the DualSense works on that game. But yeah, I think that there's a good chance we'll start seeing more games over on Xbox from PlayStation. I mean, Returnal being one of the, like I said, one of the rumored ones. We'll probably see Lego Horizon Adventures sooner rather than later. I would not be surprised to see Horizon Zero Dawn, at least, well, probably the remaster. And Spider-Man would be, I mean, Spider-Man would make the most sense, but that's also one where they have to, they have the licensing fees that they have to pay to Disney. And because of that, I mean, that eats a big chunk out of their profits. So, I mean, the fact that the game's already made and they've already easily made back the money they spent on it, maybe it won't be as big of a deal, but they'll still have to put a large chunk of the money that they earn from that going back to Disney because of the licensing fees for Spider-Man. Because even though they own the rights to Spider-Man for the movies, they don't for the games. And so the games, they still have to pay the licensing fees to Marvel via Disney. So, or Disney via Marvel, whichever it is. But yeah. I just think it's great to see, and like you said, we want those walls to break down further because we want to get to a point where it is about the quality of what the platform offers and not just about exclusives. That it's not about exclusive. I mean, would be just that it's never about exclusives anymore at all, and it's just about what does the hardware provide. and, not just holding games hostage, but actually give a greater, variety of features and that sort of thing. Because, like, I mean, there are things that are great about what PlayStation does, and there are things that are great about what Xbox does, and there are some things at least some things that Nintendo does well. But most of what is best about PlayStation and Nintendo particularly is their exclusive games. And beyond that, Nintendo especially, very anti-consumer in their practices, especially lately. And we'll be getting to an example of what PlayStation is doing that's more anti-consumer, and just kind of a sneaky way of raising the price again, or what people have called shrinkflation. But anyway, yeah, I think that's all I have to say on that.
Same here.
All right. Let's see here. So, I guess speaking of that, we can just go directly into that topic. So, the PlayStation 5 Digital Edition, which of course already they got rid of the original digital version, and then they just did the Slim. The Slim has replaced the original versions of the PS5, at least in terms of manufacturing. Whether or not, and I'm sure that there are still some of the original ones out there, but the digital edition of the PlayStation 5 Slim is going to be receiving revisions, and I think it's pretty soon. I can't remember if I saw actual dates on that. But those revisions that it's going to be receiving are specifically in Europe, and dropping the system storage from 1 terabyte down to 825 gigabytes. And but they're not lowering the price. So it's still going to cost the same, which the price had already gone up in Europe earlier this year, before the prices went up in the US. And now, on top of that, they're also reducing the amount of storage that players have in their PS5 Digital Edition. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I do see that it actually is going into effect on September 13th. So that is, over a week from now, essentially. A little over. And yeah, obviously this isn't great at all. I mean, considering the fact that it costs more now than it did at launch. It says costs 100 euros more, and now it has less storage than it did as well. So like this is as Lando once said, this deal keeps on getting worse all the time. Like this, there's no excuse for this at all. And they say they do it. This is being done to combat rising prices. Like, combat what rise? Like it's like, what do you mean you're combating the prices? You raised it not that long ago. So like, how are you saying you're combating the prices when you already raised it? Yeah, it doesn't make sense there. The math isn't mathing. But it just doesn't make sense. And there's no reasonable excuse, because again, people might say it's because of tariffs. Well, this is Europe. All right, this is Europe working with a Japanese country. So what does tariffs have to do with anything related to that? That doesn't make sense at all. It really just doesn't make sense. Also, this is just horrible. The fact that this is, again, like, this is something that has been going on for all the consoles, and stuff where we've seen the prices go up, and it just further cements the fact that these consoles are probably not going to be receiving any type of discount at all. And I would say that even at the release of the next generation, we probably won't see price drops for the current gen consoles. They're probably just going to stay the same. And at best, they'll drop back to the original MSRP prices. That's gonna be at best. But I even doubt that. I even doubt that. We'll be very fortunate if we say that they won't go up again. I feel like at this point, than to say they'll drop. But yeah, and also it just it to lose stuff, lose basic stuff as well. I mean, in the past, we've seen later iterations of consoles that get released have more storage, which is definitely ridiculous because look at the PS3. The PS3, I don't remember how much the original model had, but it had, you know, I think what was it, 128 or something like that gigs of storage, or I'm
No,
probably
it was
thinking wrong.
500.
500.
Gigs.
And then the next one had more than that, and now we have a 1 terabyte console drop down to 825 gigs of storage, and I'm just like, this is backwards stuff here. And I mean, we're regressing in in so many different ways. Prices are going up and they should be going down. Now we've got storage going down when it should be going up. It's just so backwards, all of this here. And I don't have much more to say. It's just completely inexcusable, and no one should be defending this at all.
Yeah. It is. It is definitely something that just it's very. All right, let me try to back up a little bit. It's not surprising that they're doing this. Why it is that they have to do this? I mean, obviously it's just they're trying to save costs. I couldn't even find an actual like the ability to buy an 825 gig SSD to where you could find out exactly, okay, what's the price difference between the two. But I would imagine it's not much because that's not much space, and typically like the more you go up, the amount per gigabyte is cheaper as you go up. I mean, it still ends up being more expensive, obviously, but the amount you spend per gigabyte ends up being cheaper overall. Which is why like you would spend, like I think for one of my 4 terabyte NVMe SSDs, I want to say it was like 250, something like that. And then whereas like if I bought a 1 terabyte, it would be like 160, 150, somewhere around there. And so, I mean, and I don't quote me on that because I could be wrong. I'd have to actually like look it up more extensively, but I find a lot of times that typically if you're getting something that's a little bit bigger, it's more expensive, but it's cheaper. But you get more for that price that you're spending than you get for spending less money, if that makes sense. It's less cost per gigabyte for the larger drive than it is for the smaller drive. It's just that the smaller drive is cheaper in general. You're spending a lot less on the cheaper drive, just that the amount per gigabyte is higher. So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah. Okay. So anyway, yeah, I'm not surprised that this is happening. I definitely want to know how people are going to blame this on tariffs, because that's, that's so far been the reason for the prices going up. Even though we know obviously that this is Europe, so tariffs are not the issue because tariffs have nothing to do with European prices, and ultimately they're raising the price without raising the price. They're just doing something. They're giving you less for what you pay, and that's how they make more money. Whatever. I'm done with this. Just kind of as a thing, going back to the PS6 handheld, because like I've thought about it off and on. Okay, would I be interested? Because I love the Vita. Like I think the Vita is a great handheld. I enjoyed the PSP, even though I didn't play it nearly as much, unfortunately. But I thought about it then, and as much as I'm sure it will be a great handheld, and the fact that it'll, be able to play the PS6 games is great, but I'm so sick of these closed ecosystems that I'm just like, no, I can't do it again. It's I mean, with the greatness that has been the Steam Deck, even though it's certainly underpowered by today's standards, especially compared to a lot of other, current PC handhelds that are much more powerful. It's the fact that it has that open ecosystem, the fact that I can do whatever I want with it. I can put whatever type of games I want on there. I don't have to worry about them banning my Steam Deck because I decided to emulate some games or whatever, I can name myself whatever I want without Nintendo saying, "Oh, you're not allowed to name yourself that," and all this other sort of stuff. I'm so tired of these closed ecosystems. They're just extremely frustrating. I'm tired of basically being told that I can't do what I want with the hardware that I purchased with my own money, with the games that I purchased. It's like, that's why I love PC. One of the many reasons. So, yeah. I think that's all I have to say on that, though. All right. I think I'm not as interested in talking about these other topics, just not that important. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we finish out for the night?
I think I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well, recommendations and dissuasions. Start us off.
All right, so I've got a couple different recommendations here. First one is going to be the grilled cheese hot dogs by the channel Chilies and Smoke. That definitely was good, and I enjoyed that. Next one's going to be the ranch burger by the channel Elite Barbecue Smokers. That definitely was good as well. And then, just in honor of the 100th episode, I will, as my recommendation, just enjoy gaming. It's definitely something we enjoy doing, and despite all the complaints we have with stuff going on in gaming, overall though, we just enjoy it. It's our hobby. We we still enjoy it at the end of the day, and I definitely recommend that, even if there are things about games you dislike for one reason or another, just enjoy it. It's one of the few things you can do here on this earth and enjoy during your life. So just enjoy it. Enjoy the time you have. But yeah, that's everything I have.
Very good. And I agree. Well, my recommendation, I have two of them that are related to Persona 3. First of all, Persona 3 Reload. I'm recommending that. Of course, obviously, the best versions in terms of visuals and frame rate are going to be on PS5, Xbox Series X, maybe Series S. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure what the frame rate is on there. And then PC, without question. You can still get it on PS4 and Xbox One as well. It's just going to be 30 FPS there, but it'll still, look and run well, look great, and 30 FPS is technically fine for that game. But obviously, the PC version and the higher tier console versions are going to be the best versions. PC version obviously being the best because you can get higher frame rates, better resolution, and you can play it on the Steam Deck, which is fantastic, especially because it's 60 frames per second locked. On low settings, sure, but even on low settings, it looks amazing, especially on the handheld screen. But I would also say that if you want, you could just wait and get the Switch 2 version. I just would say if you're going to get the Switch 2 version, just buy digital. Don't bother with the key cards because it's not worth it. You don't get the game on the cartridge, there's no point. But I'm sure it will be great on Switch 2, even though I would not be surprised if it's 30 FPS. It'll probably be very pretty, and it will be 30 FPS. So, I'd rather have the 60 with slightly less pretty visuals. But yeah. And then I'm also going to recommend, if you decide in Persona 3 Reload to fight Elizabeth, which you can't do until, well, it's literally the end of the game is the only time you can fight her, and it's completely optional. But look up how to beat her before attempting to fight her, because the normal strategies that you would use for any other enemy in the game will not work on that, and you will die pretty much immediately. It's basically an impossible fight unless you know what specifically kind of things you need to do in order to beat her, or if you have, like, I think maybe some certain persona that I don't have. So, and there's no achievement tied to it as far as I can tell. So, whether or not it's actually worth it, personally, I mean, like, I might do it just because I kind of want to, but if I don't, it's not going to lose me anything from that standpoint. So, but then my last recommendation is completely separate, and that is, if you have an NVIDIA graphics card, probably the same true with an AMD graphics card, make sure you check periodically to see if you have any graphics card updates. Because if you do have an update and you try to start up a game with that update not installed, sometimes you'll just have issues. And it's very annoying. I need to figure out if there's a way to make it automatically install instead of, because, like, it will automatically download it, but at least the basic way it's set up, it doesn't automatically install it. And so, like, when I started up Doom Eternal yesterday or the day before, it froze up on me very quickly into the game, and then and it's like, oh, it's probably a graphics update, graphics driver update that needs to be installed. And sure enough, that's exactly what it was, and then everything was beautiful, perfect. It's annoying. That's one thing that is annoying about PC gaming, is when the graphics driver updates come and then suddenly your game stops working properly. You just have to install that and then it's fine. But yeah, the trade-off is worth it. But yeah, that's what I have for recommendations. So, dissuasions.
Yeah, actually, so I guess this original is gonna be a recommendation I had, but I'll just rephrase it as a dissuasion. If you are buying if you are buying a CPU and you want to get a motherboard for it, do not overlook seeing the type of motherboard that you actually need that is actually compatible with your CPU, especially even if it just has the same, I guess, the same chipset. Do not be deceived by it saying that the motherboard could be compatible, because I actually have encountered that. Actually, very recently, I bought, or at least I'm going to be getting a CPU, and I thought, because it's AM4, that, any AM4 motherboard would work for it. But I realized that only the motherboard series up to a certain point support this CPU because it's so old. So yeah, I realized that I actually bought the motherboard beforehand, before checking, and then realized later on that no, it's not actually compatible. So I actually had to go and get another motherboard for that. So definitely do not overlook checking and making sure that your CPU is going to be compatible with your motherboard. Otherwise, you'll just get into some headaches there. But yeah, that's my dissuasion.
I agree with that completely. And if you're not sure where to look, easiest thing to do is go to PC Part Picker or to Newegg. If you go either one of those places and you put the parts in, it will tell you if it's compatible or not. If it's not compatible, it won't show up as being available. Once you put in the motherboard, or actually, I think you start with like CPU and GPU, and then you only have like certain motherboards you can select because it has to be compatible. If it's not compatible, it won't show up in your list. So, and I mean, it's possible it's different on PC Part Picker, but I know Newegg, at least when you do it that way, then it doesn't show things that aren't compatible. So,
and that's actually how I found out that my CPU wasn't compatible, was because I wanted to check it, see if a cooler would fit in the case, and as I was putting the PC together, I saw that the motherboard wasn't showing up, and then I was like,
Gotcha.
Then I was like, okay, that's why. So yeah.
All right. Well, I didn't write down a dissuasion, but I am going to say, let me see if I can figure out how to phrase this as a dissuasion. If you are playing a game across multiple devices, I mean, if you're playing a PC game across multiple devices, do not just assume that your settings will transfer from one device to another, because, or rather, not that your do not assume that your settings will save separately on different devices, because some games will do that. A lot of games will do that, but some will not. The Atlas games in particular don't do that. And so half the time when I switch Persona 3 Reload between my Steam Deck and my desktop, I end up having to keep readjusting the settings. And then if I don't even if I save those settings, like when I'm in the menu, I have to go back and readjust them when I get in the game in order to fix it. And I think what it might be is that, at least with it not saving properly, is that when I go to, is that after I save the settings, I have to save the game itself and not just the settings, because I think it ties the settings to the save file. But it's annoying. I mean, it takes me all of 2 seconds to fix it, because it's literally just on my desktop. I'm doing it all high with reflections turned on, frame rate set to 120. And then on my Steam Deck, I'm setting it to maximum of 60 frames per second, all on low, and reflections turned off. It doesn't take long at all to fix it, but it still is something that can come up, and I've had it happen with other games. But then on the flip side, there's games like Liza P, for example, or Another Crap's Treasure, where it keeps the settings independent, and I can have the settings set on, whatever low settings I need on my Steam Deck. It will save those settings on the Steam Deck, and then when I boot it up on my PC, it's still set at all maximum settings, and it runs beautifully. So, yeah, just do not assume that your settings will remain independent, and make sure that you check them each time.
Very, very good stuff there.
Like, Gotham Knights was another one where it does actually keep them independent, which is great. So,
yep.
Okay. Well, where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel. I am Xeracon. That's IAMXCRACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. I'm hoping to get this out the same day this podcast goes out. And that I will definitely have to see, just a matter of making sure I can get this issue worked out. But yeah, so I've got a full-length version of the new podcast theme that I've been working on, and that will hopefully be out the same day as the podcast. If not, it'll be a little later, but hopefully not too much later than that. But yeah, so that's what I've got going on for that. So definitely look out for that. I've still got the Spider-Man animated series video that I'm working on, and that's going to be a little later with everything going on right now. There's some stuff, possibly a new series that I want to start. Definitely that's something that happened down the road. I've still got to get some stuff together, but I've got ideas floating around my head that I definitely want to do. I definitely feel like I should be doing so. I'll announce all that later on as more stuff comes to fruition. But yeah, that's all I've got.
Very good. I'm especially looking forward to hearing the full-length version of the theme. One question with that is, are you going to have do you need like the logo in order to just be able to add that as like background for it?
Oh.
Or did you already have some kind of video planned for that?
Yeah, I probably might just do the logo.
Okay.
That probably might be simple.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. Remind me tomorrow, and I can send it over to you.
Okay.
That will be easy peasy. All right. Well, you can find me on my YouTube gaming channel at the Frozen Gamer 87, and I actually do have technically new content out. So there's of course, the full-length version of Why I Love PC Gaming, which is about an hour and a half long, going into all the reasons I could think of that I love PC gaming. Very in-depth, unscripted video essay. Unscripted, but mostly organized, as I like to call it. Video essay. So there's that. But then I also put out individual segments as separate videos for each of the different segments of that long video. And I put that in a playlist. So if you just want to check out a single segment, each one is labeled individually. Some of them are short as just over a minute long. Some of them are longer, around 14 minutes. But there's a total of 25 segments, plus the introduction and the conclusion that are only included in the playlist. So there's all that. There's a couple of minor editing mistakes when it came to the split versions, because sometimes I had like the beginning of the next point, or like the video part of the very beginning of the next point, like the first 2-3 frames left at the very end, and it's like, whatever, I'm not going to go back and fix it, it's fine. But yeah, otherwise it's in good shape. But yeah, then of course there's the video version of the podcast on our YouTube and Rumble channels. On YouTube it's at the Orangebox Podcast. On Rumble it's not a custom URL, but you can still find the podcast there. That goes live every Friday at 7 a.m. Central Time, barring any technical issues. And the audio-only version goes live on all major podcast platforms at 12 a.m. Central Time every Friday, once again, barring any technical issues. And, like I said, we reached 100 episodes, 100 weeks in a row of putting the podcast out, plus the 2 weeks that the audio was borked, it never went out. The first week, I think there was no audio recorded because we didn't record our tracks independently, and so it was supposed to be tied to the video recording, but the audio was not set up correctly, and so there was no audio at all. The second week, we had recorded it, and I can't remember if it was my audio or your audio
think
that
it
was missing from the
audio.
video. I can't remember. I mean, either way, the point is that we didn't have the full audio, so it was completely useless. So then the third week we actually got it correct, and we started recording our audio separate from the video just in case, and that's helped us a lot with our various issues throughout the last 100 episodes. So we've still had hiccups along the way and various issues, but overall it's gone well. So I'm happy with the state of the podcast. It's growing a little tiny bit at a time, and whether it really gets any bigger or not doesn't matter to me, because I'm having a good time just talking every week, catching up, and getting that outlet to talk about video games we've been playing and the current news. So yeah, but last thing is, there is my YouTube cooking channel, Not Authentic But Delicious. That's YouTube at NABD Cooking, and that one hasn't had any new content for a while. I don't know when I'm going to get something else new up. It's basically just I need to get things recorded. There is a small chance, I'm not going to promise anything, but there's a small chance that Friday, with making that crab dip pizza, that I might record it. But I haven't decided yet, because a lot of it is just timing, because there's a lot to do, and but I have some ideas of how to make it even better than it already sounded. So I can just tell you what those ideas are. So of course, start off with that crab dip base, the cream cheese and whatever else, which I'll have to get that recipe from you so I can see exactly what all goes into it. So start off with that as the sauce, and then either directly on top of that or on top of the cheese, I haven't decided yet. I'm either going to do tomatoes and then chop up some pickled jalapenos, or I'm going to do just a pico de gallo that I have in the fridge. that I just got to say. And then I'm still not entirely sure of the order. I mean, I'll kind of get your thoughts on it, but crab, of course, and I got some real crab for that, and then some of the homemade bacon, bits of that, and then after it's all cooked with, obviously mozzarella cheese on top. Maybe cheddar as well. I haven't quite decided on that yet. I'm still kind of thinking through it, but then drizzle some hot honey. I just think all that combination will be really good, and it'll help to alleviate some of the richness. Like, I'm kind of leaning more towards doing tomatoes and then pickled jalapenos, because the pickled jalapenos help to cut through the richness a bit more. But I haven't fully decided yet. There's a variety of different things I could try doing. I just have to decide on exactly how I want to do it. I'm thinking probably I'll end up with the crab on top of the cheese. But I don't know. What do you think? Is it better to have the crab on top of the cheese or underneath the cheese?
So what I did was I put it on top of, or at least this is, it'll be fine, either way. But I put it on top of the mozzarella, but underneath the cheddar. But like, even if you just like did the mozzarella, I would still just say put it on top of the cheese.
Okay. So I mean, just out of curiosity, my thought I just had was that it would be do crab on top of the mozzarella and then sprinkle some Old Bay on top, obviously. And then put the cheddar on top of that. You think that's better, or do you think it's better to do the Old Bay on the very top?
I think either works. I think you could do it with either one. I think, if you put it on top, it would definitely, soak into it more. But I guess just like if you prefer it for more aesthetically, it probably would.
Well,
be
it's less than of an aesthetic thing. It's the flavor, which I haven't used Old Bay enough to where I'm like super familiar with it, like you are. Like, I've never lived on the East Coast.
I mean, I think it's fine putting it, and I think it's fine putting it underneath the cheddar. I think that's fine. I don't think it'll impact it too much either way.
Yeah, I'm mostly just wanting to make sure that the crab gets properly seasoned with that. That's the big thing. I was kind of debating about whether it would be good to put a little dash of lemon juice on there too, to help with the crab.
That could definitely.
I don't know. I'm thinking.
I haven't thought about that.
I'm trying not to overdo it, have too many flavors, but at the same time, if you have the flavors done right, even if it's really complex, it can also be really delicious. And so it's kind of like a balancing act there, especially with something I've never made before. So. Yeah. But anyway, so there's a chance I'll film that. I'm not going to promise anything. We'll just kind of play it by ear. So, but yeah, that's everything. All right, so last chance. Any final thoughts?
No, sir.
All right. Well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Zeracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. This has been our 100th episode. And until next time, I just want to say happy birthday to my amazing wife. Orange Box Podcast, out.